Most of us take for granted that we can turn on the faucet in the morning, brush our teeth, wash our face, take a shower. Because water infrastructure is mostly invisible, we don't think twice about it. You turn the tap, and it works. That's all we need to know. But in Tallulah, Louisiana, the story was different.
Well, the city of Tallulah is looking forward to rehabbing its 60-plus years old water plant.
A problem with the water pressure robbed the city of Tallulah of running water.
The water back on in Tallulah, but all is not right, at least not yet.
Shows what the city of Tallulah posted on their Facebook page that their water system has been declared in a state of emergency.
RJ Maloney was at the meeting and says members of the community did not hold back when expressing their concerns. They also voiced their desire to have nothing more than access to safe and clean drinking water.
For years, residents lived with water they couldn't trust. Constant boil advisories, strange discoloration, and the routine of buying bottled water just to get through the week. This wasn't just about broken pipes. It was about broken systems, decades of aging infrastructure, limited resources, and unclear oversight that left the community vulnerable. By the time the state intervened, the system was failing. Everyone was exhausted, and there was no hope for a way forward.
City council members were expected to vote on entering a receivership tonight.
Before you can decide on anything else, you need to get a true assessment of the plant where you can get some independent eyes to come in and examine what's actually going on.
Last month, we reported the state had taken control of Tallulah's water system. Yesterday, Governor Jeff Landry issued an executive order that removed Bonton and Associates from the water system's management.
We learned of the Tallulah water situation actually a number of years ago. It's been very public as far as our role in supporting the state as well as the utility in Tallulah. That came about early fall of 2024. The state petitioned the courts to allow them to take over the Tallulah water system on a temporary basis and to appoint a receiver to be in control of the entire system.
When we were tasked to go up to Tallulah to start this project, the initial thought was we were going to introduce ourselves as a team and let the city as well as the council and the community know what we were intended to do, which initially the main goal was to develop a corrective action plan over the next 90 days that provide the framework and the path forward for the city of Tallulah.
Part of our work was the daily operations of the plant out in the field, as well as the financial mechanisms of the system, and then at the same time performing all of the assessments that went into developing the corrective actions plan.
However, the weekend before we actually went up there to meet with them, they had some operational failures at the plant, and they were unable to produce water for a period of time. At this point, there was two issues that we had to deal with: keeping the plant up and running, as well as serving the needs of LDH and what they tasked us to do, which was to come up with a long-term, viable, sustainable water utility for the city of Tallulah.
We didn't really know how bad it actually was until we actually walked out there. And I can just flat out say I've never seen anything like that. There was standing water, probably a foot of it, throughout almost the whole site. One of their pieces of equipment at the front end of their process that the raw water comes into, it was like a waterfall. Whenever we started talking to the operators and how they were operating the plant, it was like, every day they wake up, they come to this plant, it's triage. Nothing was working the way it should. Like literally the entire plant. Like if you can go to every single piece of equipment, and they had problems with it. My first thought was, how do you fix this? How do you fix it without just doing something new or just tearing it down and getting water from somewhere else?
We could have, as a firm and a team, gone up there, assessed what was happening, and then almost stepped aside, done the corrective action plan. Me being up there on an operational day-to-day stance was important to me, and I think to the community, that something was being done. I mean, if they didn't see us up there, they wouldn't know what was happening, where the money was going. Was the state really doing something?
We were the court-appointed receiver to give us access to the data and everything to do that. But when we got out there and we started talking to these guys, we were like, if we don't do something more, this plant's gonna shut down and they're not gonna get it back up, and it's gonna be a disaster. Like, they're not gonna have water.
When you're dealing with small utilities, it's balancing the trade-offs between autonomy, obviously meeting your regulatory mandates, and then keeping the system and the service that the system provides, keeping it affordable for your customers. Typically with smaller utilities, you have to pick two of those. And so what adds to the complexity in this particular instance is the state chose to take the system over via a receivership. So that puts that accountability really on the outs, right? Not everybody understood that.
It was really kind of backtracking with the operators. Some of the things that we looked at were the problems with their discharge pumps. And we coordinated and helped get those pumps fixed. Like they would go out and we would fix it like overnight. And without those things like that, like we feel that by the end of the 90 days of our receivership, the plant wouldn't have been operational at all.
When I saw that needed to happen, we got on the phone with the LDH and said, hey, this is going to take more than we anticipated and just to stabilize this plant and get it up and running. And the state they understood it, and we laid out why. They were very accommodating, and they realized that, hey, this may be a little bit different approach than what we thought, but it's needed.
Conveying the realities of who was in charge and what the mandate was especially tenuous, especially there in the beginning, and so that added to the complexity. And then when you couple that with the fact that we're talking about the most fundamental element that we all need to live, and it's a highly regulated resource at that, and so we have to make some very firm decisions on what's in the best course of action for the utility itself, all while managing these communications channels.
We wanted to provide a roadmap for the state and the city, say, hey, these are the options. This is how much they cost to provide sustainable water to the city of Tallulah. What we did was, to the best of our ability, tell them, if you go this route, this is what it's gonna cost. It's going to solve the problem. Like that, each option we detailed enough and looked into enough to where we knew this will solve the problem. The hiccup comes where, how do you pay for it? Can you pay for it?
First off, they didn't have the budget to actually fix some of these problems, and can they afford what we're going to build? And if they can't, how can we provide some opportunities for them for access to different dollars, whether it's federal government or the state government? So you have a community that's patient but running out of patience. Then you have an administration that hears from the community, and they were hired to deal with these kinds of issues. Then you have the regulatory body, which is the Louisiana Department of Health in this case, that have the oversight to make sure that you're drinking water that won't make you sick. So you have to communicate those issues to them of what you're doing on a day-to-day basis at the plant to get towards those goals. In addition to that, there's a layer of regulatory oversight that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis and report back to the state. My role was really coordinating those aspects, as well as our team of experts that we brought in, which was basically boots on the ground and making sure that we could get pumps when we needed them, get valves replaced when we needed them, and in many cases they don't have the staff to read the meters properly. They're continually dealing with non-payment issues, and you have a community that says, "Why am I paying for water when I don't even have dependable water?" So they push back on many cases about payment, but they have to pay. So you're dealing with an irate customer base to some degree, because you're paying for something you don't even have. So we had a team of people go analyze every unit and every process within the plant to come up with a corrective action. What will we need to do to bring this plant up to compliance? And then what are our options of how to do that from a purely technical standpoint?
And when we came in and we met with the staff there at the plant, we embraced those guys. We leaned in and we said, hey, look, these are the guys that have kept this plant running. We want them to be a part of our team. We want them to be a part of the success.
I felt a sense of pride working with the staff at the plant. They take it so personal. You had people that are working 12-hour shifts coming back 3 hours later to support something going on overnight.
You know, not only do we have the connection with the local staff and the historical knowledge of how we've operated the system in the past, but we're bringing a world-class team in there with us to help make decisions on what we need to do going forward. And then in addition to that, we had legal experts who understood the regulatory frameworks. Plochet and Carr was our legal team that supported us.
When we put this team together to address this issue, we thought pretty long and hard about it. We needed a strong technical partner, which we brought in Burns & McDonnell. We brought in Eisner-Amper from a financial and a governance support. And then we brought a company called Wet Work Group. They operate plants, particularly in northeast Louisiana. So that was our team, and that was our approach to address the corrective action plan. We wanted to provide a plan and an approach that not just what we build, but what we build will last. A lot of things that challenges they're dealing with were the fact that they didn't spend the money to maintain what they had. So it got to a point where you couldn't just maintain it, you had to replace it. Let's build them something, let's operate it properly, let's have proper maintenance, look at it from a life cycle approach, and that's how you can sustain it over the long run.
We really see the services that we provided as bringing clarity to, hey, here are your options on how to stabilize the system, not only now and in the emergency context, but also long-term as you go forward. And I think our role as engineers is to take all of that into account and to recognize all of those different perspectives and to chart a path forward. If we're communicating with an elected official, we're aware of what's important to them. And so as we convey what should happen next as it relates to that pump or that filter, we're putting into context the things that are important to them. They may not care about certain technical parameters, but they surely don't want the water to go off, right? And so we'll present our findings and our recommendations in a manner that connects and resonates with them. If we're speaking to technical stakeholders, right, we understand that they're concerned about the nuts and the bolts. And so we'll convey our path forward to them in a way that aligns with their perspective. Or if we're speaking to the public, they just care about if the water's on. They don't need an education on, transient forces and water hammer and all of that stuff. They just want the water to be on and they want it to be safe.
But we did work with the city, and we looked hard into grants.
The city of Tallulah has been a recipient of a grant for its water plant rehabilitation project.
The city of Tallulah would receive $5 million to rehabilitate the entire water treatment plant as part of the water.
And then we also, worked with Eisner-Amper to look at what they could do with raising rates and other one-time funding options to try and bridge the gap between what they had available and what they could afford, to bridge the gap between what they needed to execute the plan that we provided.
When we shifted on the corrective action plan, we basically broke what we called the baseline stabilization component out of it and said, regardless of whatever option we go with, whether we rebuild the plant or we build a whole new plant or we get water from a nearby utility, these certain things have to happen. And so we, in my mind, laid a very clear path that addressed the emergency stabilization that also led and fed into the long-term plan.
We had a list from LDH of all the notice of violations that they had sent to the city. And it was, I think a log of 70 to 100, somewhere in there. It was a lot of open violations. And so what we, in working with Burns & McDonnell, looked at, we basically looked at that list and catered the new process and the options, saying, if you go with this option, this is how it will address all of these. Or, if there was some intermediate things that you can do this, and this will address these. And so, yeah, it looked at every single problem that they had and looked at the different options that we were assessing and tied it back to this will close these notice of violation. This will close all of these problems, and in doing so, will provide quality water to the city of Tallulah.
So at the end of the 90 days, we had a plan. We addressed all the options that we laid out and fully explained them, which provided a menu of sorts for the state to look at and say, hey, these are our options. This is fully vetted. We anticipated when we entered the receivership that at this point we would petition the courts to remove ourselves as the receiver. So we did that, but we had provided the state with a roadmap towards a long-term solution, but also in addition to that, address some of the immediate needs that the plant needed to address.
Our mandate in Tallulah was to address the water, period. Yes, we recognize, financial constraints and different power dynamics and, autonomy and things of that nature, but at the end of the day, our team is gonna look ourselves in the mirror and we're gonna judge our performance based on, did we help the condition of the water? Did we help the continuity of the delivery of water? Did we in any way ensure fire protection, service continuity, pressure continuity? Did we remove the barriers to those very fundamental aspects of water service?
I cannot wait to see the citizens of Tallulah have sustainable, drinkable water that they can depend on every day.
The culture here, we enjoy and embrace challenges, and we want the hard stuff. We want to tackle the hardest problems out there because we feel like we are capable of doing that. And the hardest problems normally will help the most people as well. So that's kind of a culture that we have here that we want to be able to do that.
As engineers, obviously we love when the projects are big and massive. But rarely can our communities afford to pay for comprehensive overhauls of these critical systems. So instead, a more fiscally sustainable path forward is to maintain it. And so our hope is that we can, expand and scale these services throughout the state to help communities throughout the state that are struggling with their water systems as well.
The work in Tallulah paints a picture of hope, because the goal was never to fix a broken pipe. The goal was sustainability. It was about bringing clarity to a system and empowering the community to take ownership of it. That's what this work is about, building solutions that last. Bonton's approach shows what's possible when clarity leads the way. And when it does, real progress follows.